What is something you did in your youth that if you turned out to be a mentally ill psychopath serial killer, people would look back and say I should have seen it then? When I was around 12 or 13, my favorite pet rabbit died. We had quite a few, and somehow, in her death throes, she had managed to wrap her teeth around 2 links in the bottom of her cage. So now rigor mortis has set in, and she's completely stuck with her teeth set around the bottom of the cage. I try to pull her off, but no luck. So I go back into the house and tell my mom that Cinnamon Buns is dead, and I need a screwdriver. As my mom cries in the kitchen, I head back out to the barn with my screwdriver to jimmy her mouth open enough to get her off the bottom of the cage. The whole time, all I'm thinking is what if I use too much force and her head rips in half. It didn't, but I think my mom was genuinely concerned about the fact that I felt zero emotion about the whole thing. I just put the corpse in a bag and told her I'd deal with it when I got home from school, washed my hands, had breakfast, and went on about my day. R.I.P. Cinnamon Buns. Glad your head didn't rip in half. I wrote 666 on the bathroom wall with my poop when I was like 6 or 7 off of something I saw on TV. Freaked my mom out and my dad just sorta stood there. Your dad was probably just too proud to express himself. Played morgue with my friends' Barbies by stripping them naked, covering them with napkins and putting them in drawers. I don't think I knew the word morgue, but I knew what I was doing. I thought you said friends' babies for a moment and was very alarmed. When I was 5, my best friend's mom was pregnant. She asked me if I would like to have a little sister too. I replied that if my mom had another baby I would throw it out the window. In about 2nd grade I started watching scary movies and loved them. In my notebook I would draw characters and scenes from these scary movies. One day my teacher had a notebook check and was worried about my drawings, so she spoke to my mom and me about it. I didn't really understand at the time. I remember I was upset that she didn't like my drawings. In middle school I bought a used copy of Fangoria from someone for $1. Our gym teacher saw me with it and snatched it from my hand. Then he proceeded to tell the whole class how fricked up horror movies were and how only people with serious issues would be into stuff like that. I knew even back then that he was wrong. I attempted to strangle a classmate because he was continuously yelling that break time was over. Also when I was younger I would go around asking people if they would rather a quick death or a slow death. Man, frick that guy though, for real. He deserves it. I put a metal pen lid on a heater in class when I was 11 and then put it on a girl's arm which burnt her because I fancied her. Marking your territory. In 3rd grade, every day the teacher would start a sentence to a story and we had 30 minutes to make up whatever we wanted after. Almost all of my stories involved something messed up, with one death usually happening. Some examples include the puppy fell in the, and I proceeded to write a story about a puppy that fell into a bottomless pit. All of its probable thoughts, and said it fell so long it eventually died while still falling. Those were some awkward parent-teacher conferences, I'm sure. The puppy fell in with a miscreant gang of drug-abusing housepets. His drug-addled corpse was found stuffed in a birdcage under an I-87 overpass. Citizens are advised to be on the lookout for a green parrot approximately 16 inches in height with a large scar on his left wing. Known aliases include Buzzsaw, Angel Droppings, and Polo and Tacrocroc. I used to perform experiments on grasshoppers. What that means is I would freeze them, try and resuscitate them, drown them, by sticking blue tack on their legs, and put them on ants' nests. If it helps, I am petrified of them now. Some sort of self-induced fear. I also didn't kill anyone, yet. Should I be worried or relieved that I'm not the only one? Convinced a girl to put her finger in a pencil sharpener, then turned the crank. Bonus. Hypothetical serial killer me kills people with a wood chipper. I'm picturing that scene from Fargo, only a massive pencil sharpener with someone's leg sticking out. When I was 4 or 5 I bit my friend's finger hard enough to require a band-aid because she found a penny in a cup that was laying around and I wanted it for myself. Good job, Smeagol. I had a bully in 4th grade and he would not let up. One day he took my drawing and tore it up in half, so I chased him down the hall with a pencil, threatening to stab him with it. I tackled him down and had my arm drawn back when they pulled me off of him. I turned out perfectly fine, I'd say. My bully went to prison about 7 years ago for car theft and aggravated assault. Also can be noted that Aaron Hernandez was also in our class, and we all know how that turned out. When I was 13 or 14 and first started playing The Sims, I made a serial killer. He would put his victims in a 4x1 cell with a fridge, enough to keep them alive but no more. He would sit and watch them in misery for hours and get off to it. He fell in love with a woman who scorned him. She ended up there as well. Most of the neighborhood ended up buried in his backyard. So if I ended up as a serial killer, I don't think people would be even remotely surprised. I've been playing The Sims a lot lately and I have a really hard time even making two Sims be enemies. I'm tempted to try this and see how long I can handle it before I feel too guilty and start a nice game with a chef, a painter, a painter, a painter, a painter, a painter, a painter. I threw half-eaten apples on hedgehogs. They would stick on their backs. Poor hedgehogs. So, I started this account earlier today and this was my first ever comment on Reddit. All I can say is holy crap, that's a lot of responses. Guess me and my psycho stories from my childhood will do good here. This was in Sweden BTW. I made pit traps for my dolls, and one time I accidentally broke a G.I. Joe doll because a tribe of Amazon women was stoning him for dishonoring my Skipper doll. I wasn't a psycho, I just read a lot. Mythology, fantasy, everything. But it used to worry my mom sometimes. She puts the lotion in the bucket. She puts the lotion on the skin. I took a kitchen knife to school when I was 6 and one of the other kids ratted me out. The teachers kept yelling at me asking me why I brought it. I didn't know. I was freaking 6. I thought it was cool. If I had done that nowadays I'd have been expelled and probably taken away from my parents due to zero tolerance. Can't tell you how many knives I've been shown in schools before I graduated. You get 1 or 2 mass school killings and all of a sudden every dangerous tool is a deadly weapon. Sheesh. When I was a kid, probably 5 or 6, I joined the Cub Scouts. When they asked me why, I told them it was because I wanted to hunt and kill small animals. That's amazing. I bet they were a little concerned though. In high school I had just listened to The Offspring during lunch, one song being Genocide, right before English class. We were then asked in class, what is a word that you like the sound of? My answer, genocide. I really liked the song Violent Pornography by System of a Down. One time I tried googling the song name but didn't put the band. I got a much different set of results than I was expecting. When I was a kid I used to pour hot wax from candles onto my hands. It hurt like heck, but I thought it was worth it to have cool wax shapes with my fingerprints in them. Definite serial killer material. I'm about to be 23 and I still do this. It hurts so good though. I used to run through my backyard naked and the jerk off on a really big stone in an open field. My backyard was a big forest. I'd like to put those days behind me though. What? I set fire to the living room curtains when I was 7, and I set fire to an old chair in an old outbuilding when I was 8, and maybe something else when I was 13 that I'm not telling you about because I don't know what the statute of limitations is in my area for arson. Don't worry, no one was hurt, but after that particular incident, which is not an admission of guilt, thank you very much, I kinda gave up the whole firebug thing. Fire. One time in the game Black and White, God Simulator game, I made everyone into an disciple breeder, and I started killing everyone in my village. There were very efficient ways to kill people, however I didn't use those. I simply tried to skip the villagers on the water, hour after hour, until everyone was dead. Which took a while since people were doing everything they could to grow the conversation. I really liked throwing the children, or throwing everyone in a family except for the father. Then wait for him to remarry and have another 2.5 kids, then kill them all and have him try again. Have another 2.5 kids. What? Well, I used to voice my thoughts when I was alone while I was walking to school, and got caught a few times. Not talking to myself, just a weird habit of saying crap I was thinking aloud. I still do that. Not me, but my younger brother always had this thing for ropes. Hook ropes specifically. They are the thick elastic bands with hooks at either end used for tying down stuff in trucks, etc. From the age of 4-8, all the wanted to do was hog tie his stuffed animals and hang them around the house. His favorite one to tie up was the stuffed Woody from Toy Story. Every day in the summer, my parents would come home to find Woody and his Teletubby friends hanging from nooses, suspended from the stairs or the cabinet handles, etc. This was the only thing he wanted to do, and he only ever asked for hook ropes at holidays. He would get soapy if you took them down, and he would just sit there humming to himself while he tied and hung his toys, one by one. I am 10 years older and was always terrified he'd kill me in the night or some crap. When I was 6ish and fished with my grandpa and brother, my brother and I would slit open multiple minnows' chests and pop their lungs, heart, stomach, and liver with fishing hooks. Not sure how to break this to your buddy. My brother and I used to make paper airplanes and have contests to see who could make one that flew the best, or went the furthest, or landed most correctly. There were also a lot of small lizards around where we lived, so we eventually devised a way to judge the landing of our planes by taping a lizard in the crease at the front of the plane with his head sticking out the front. Then we'd throw our plane, and if it landed correctly with a nose up attitude, the lizard would come through relatively unscathed. However, if it landed virtually any other way, the outcome for the lizard was usually much worse. I was pretty quick to get angry as a kid, but it was all at the stuff kids usually get angry at: video games, getting made fun of, little brother doing something to annoy me. My parents and older sisters used to tell me all the time that if I didn't learn to control my anger, I would wind up killing somebody and going to prison. I remember thinking at the time that that was a horrible thing to say to a kid, and I still do. All the same, if I had turned into a serial killer, I'm sure I would have heard them in the courtroom saying, "Yup, I knew he would turn out like this since the day he threw the Super Nintendo controller on the ground because he couldn't beat that one boss in Mario." Probably flooding ants out of their ant holes and then lighting them on fire with a barbecue lighter. Either that or killing a squirrel by waiting for it to come below my deck and crushing its head with a large rock. Yeah, looking back, I was a pretty fricked up child. Crushing its head with a large rock. I lit my mother's bed on fire while she was laying in it. My mom told me she'd take me to the arcade, but she wanted to finish watching a soap opera. I was just being a bored little kid looking for stuff to play with under her bed, and I found a lighter. The box spring was old and that paper cloth material had rips in it that were hanging down in strands. I looked at the lighter and looked at the strand. You know on Looney Tunes how they light a piece of dynamite and the fuse goes out just before it explodes? That's what my young mind thought would happen. So I lit it. Immediately the fire spread in both directions towards the head and foot of the bed. Again, I draw back on my Looney Tunes expertise and think I can just blow it out. Not a chance. In a matter of 10 seconds, fire engulfed an outer ring of the bed. That's when my mom noticed it and jumped out screaming. We lived in my grandparents' basement at the time. My nana heard and came running down. In the heat of the moment and possibly thinking that liquid will put out a fire, my nana grabs a gallon of bleach to try to put out the blaze. That was probably a bad idea. They eventually got it under control and my grandparents' house didn't burn down, luckily. My father had a pair of sweatpants on the bed which got bleach stains all over them, and he wears them to this day over 20 years later. I'm sure you're wondering. Yes, I did still get to go to the arcade and got my butt handed to me in Street Fighter. Duh, everyone knows fire loves liquid. I had night terrors. My mom said that the worst part was always finding me standing in the corner of a random room, covering my eyes with my hands, screaming nonsensical gibberish. So obviously, I had the ability to transport to another world, a terror-filled world, and witnessed horrible atrocities which will influence my psychotic behavior in the near future. I have a game with my friends. Whenever a new person is introduced to our group, we make him play the story game. The principle is simple. The person has to guess a story the other created in 5 minutes beforehand. Make the player leave the room. When he comes back, he can only ask yes/no questions. The point is that there is no story. If the question ends with a vowel, answer yes, else answer no. That way, the player makes his own story. You must wonder, why is that relevant to the thread? It's easy. Some people will make some crazy butt stories by asking crazy butt questions. We once had a guy who ended up talking about violation and murder on a different planet. Funny game. That's a genius way to judge people. Had a bit too much fun dissecting a frog in the 7th grade. I just really wanted to see muscles and things the teacher didn't talk about, so I kinda cut some legs to see for myself. I don't think that's sociopathic as much as it's just a natural scientific curiosity. I was stoned with my friend on Easter when I was 15. Saw a rabbit in a bush and threw a brick at it to scare it out. Brick hit rabbit. Rabbit died. I killed the fricking Easter bunny, and my reaction was uncontrollable laughter. You stoned the Easter bunny, lol. Oh god, this just came back to me. I always had the reputation of being a really sweet, quiet, nice kid. I would share well, not cause trouble, etc. And I would play huge games with my Star Wars Lego Playmobil. I would create massive plot lines and big worlds, as a lot of kids do. However, I would always leave toys on strings dangling from doorknobs. Fair enough. Except that they would be tied around the necks as little nooses. So dotted around the house from door handles and banisters would be strings with lots of toy all dangling from nooses. My mum still claims I wasn't killing all my toys. They were just there for storage. And I have no memory why I would do it. But yeah, there may be some seed of darkness lurking back there. Well, I suppose I may as well confess this. I am a killer. My first murder. And I do think of it as such now. After all the therapy I've had and self-analysis that I've done, was an accident, though I've tried to rationalize it by claiming that I just wasn't careful enough or that I wasn't paying attention. The simple truth of the matter is that there was an element of intent to my actions. I was curious about how it would feel, about what would happen. Like those times when you stand at the edge of a cliff and think, just for a moment, what it would be like to jump. The only difference was that my life wasn't at risk, but that of another being. I can still remember the wet, sickening crunch. The feeling haunted me for a while after that, but perhaps more disturbing was the sense of satisfied, empowered superiority that I experienced. I knew that killing was wrong, but in a strange way, I didn't care. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that knowing it was such a horrific act made it all the more appealing. I didn't have any plans to repeat it, but I wanted to. Just under a month later, I killed again. Put yourself in my shoes. Imagine seeing a lone innocent walking along the street at night. You might very well have missed them, were it not for the glow of the street lamp and the dancing shadow of their movement. You glance around and see that other than them, you're completely alone. If you wanted to, you could end their life. You could be the final thing that they saw before the light in their eyes dimmed forever. You could be the only one to ever claim that you killed them. It would make you special. It would make you the equivalent of a god. Sometimes I wonder if my second victim even knew that I was coming. That was all it took. I gave myself over entirely to those murderous urges. I killed again and again, all the while convincing myself that I was somehow ridding the world of filth. Each time, it was an act of opportunity, a crime of passion executed by the cold, unfeeling entity that I became in those moments. To date, I've likely had dozens, if not hundreds of victims. And though I've learned to feel remorse for my actions, the motivation for those killings is still with me. I really hate spiders. TLDR. I have killed. I will likely kill again. People keep missing that last line before the TLDR. Last year, I'm in high school still. My friend asked me what I wanted to be when I grow up and I told him I wanted to be a pathologist. For those of you who don't know, pathologists are responsible for preforming autopsies. He asked me why I'm a pathologist and I said, well, it has all the benefits of being a serial killer but without having to actually go out and kill people. He didn't react the way I thought he would. I had all of these elaborate plans to kill my little sister that were constantly thwarted by my parents and the babysitter. Notable attempts included bringing her to the deep end of the swimming pool and removing her water wings and calling a taxi to take me to the gun shop so I could get a weapon with which to eliminate the one who took all the attention away from me. I was 6. My sister and I are best friends now, but I totally wanted her dead when I was a child. I'm going to answer with pretending to be someone else for no apparent reason whenever I get the opportunity, just because I enjoy casually lying to people. I still do this. I've said several times in my religion class that the best solution to all of the world's problems is to exterminate humanity. Might be seen as a red flag if I ever put it into practice, though. I used to draw lots of gruesome corpses and severed heads and crap. I remember a Sunday school type class in which we were supposed to draw our favorite Bible story, and I drew David standing over the bloody corpse of Goliath, holding his giant head up by the hair with both hands. In my defense, everybody thinks violence is cool. How come kids are expected to draw puppies and crap? I buried kittens alive in a 5-gallon bucket, covered them in dirt. My brother freaked out and went and told my mom. She came running outside and dumped the bucket out. A few kittens were already dead. She asked me why I did it, and I told her that the kittens needed to be covered up. I was like 3 or 4, maybe? I don't remember it happening, but my whole family says it did. What the frick? In 1st grade I stabbed a girl with my pencil because she wouldn't admit mine was the sharpest. It was the sharpest. Let me first explain. I grew up in the country, in the South, in East Texas, very poor. Little boys running around woods and trailer parks with guns are like packs of rouge dogs. We also had firecrackers, M80s, and various homemade explosives. And in case anyone doesn't know, cats are abundant in trailer parks and rural areas. A lot of people consider them pests. We had free license by the people, county, and state of Texas to do as we pleased with them, metaphorically speaking. Also, lizards. I learned to sew at a very young age, and I'd cut the heads off of my stuffed animals and sew them onto other ones. I pretended my Barbies were vampires and murdered innocent civilians. When I got mad at my brothers, I'd put their action figures in front of the space heater so they'd melt. I picked up all the dead animals my cat brought me, roadkill, and locust shells, and tried to keep them. To no avail. Thanks, Mom. I'd spy on my neighbors almost daily after school and kept track of their daily routines. Dead things have always fascinated me, but it must have been really creepy for my parents, I guess. I used to put sticks, stones and mud through people's letterboxes, on my own, not with friends. When I was 8, I wrote a story about 2 children who went into a murder house and found the body parts hidden around the place. I never actually finished writing that story. I fantasized about leading an army of cats. If my mother tried to talk to me while I was enjoying this daydream, I would tell her to be quiet. Also, I used to talk to a mop. I used to microwave gummy bears standing up so that they would melt down to just bare heads. I would arrange them in various patterns, some lying down, some sitting, and nuke them to their grisly fate. It was my version of a nuclear holocaust for those little gummy bears. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.